Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 290 being recorded on March 5th, 2000.
290X?
290. No, just the base 290. This is just
episode. Is it still
base
overpriced?
We're about $100 over expected MSRP.
Okay, people in the IRC chat start PayPaling me now.
Yeah, normally we're free. Today we are $100 over.
And no, we don't take Bitcoin.
Look, it's market. It's not us. You know, people are just so eager to buy it. We have limited space in our streaming server. It's unfortunate, but
Josh is clanking empties over there.
that's why he needs that $100. Today is March 5th, 2014. By the way, I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
The gang is all here. We're going to walk through this week's stories in hardware. We're going to talk about the Intel SSD 730, the Western Digital MyCloud EX2, AMD's announcement officially of the Kabini socketed platform, maybe some DirectX 12 discussion. But first, let's talk about how you can find out when we go live, because that's really the most important thing for you guys, I believe, is you want to know when you can watch us again. So we record the show every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Sometimes it varies. Sometimes we've done it on Thursday every once in a while. But if you go to pcper.com/subscribe and go to this tiny little mailing list, you can sign up. All you do is we ask for your name, we ask for your email, you sign up to a mailing list that's auto-subscribe and unsubscribe, all that's easy to do. We only use it to send out emails when we are going live and let you know that kind of stuff. So like today, we played a video for an hour during the pre-show about what the internet was like in 1996, and we sent that out to our subscribers, so they knew to tune in early so they can learn about Gopher and PPP and hypertext. What did he call it? Hyperlink text?
News groups.
And URLs. Don't forget URLs.
URLs.
URLs. Y-E-A-R-L. URL.
URLs.
Y-A-R-L. URLs. So sign up for that. pcper.com/subscribe is the URL you can do that at. And then before we get into our stories and news, we have a contest. We're giving away some stuff, and I know that will interest a lot of you. The GeForce GTX 750 Ti. We have 5 of them to give away, courtesy of NVIDIA. And what do you have to do to win one of these cards? You go to our website, and we'll have this on, we'll move it to the top of pcper.com, but if you just search for Win a GeForce GTX 750, you'll be able to find it. This is kind of in response to the story we did where we upgraded 3 off-the-shelf desktop computers with the 750 Ti and, improved Bioshock Infinite from 17 frames a second to 110, for example. And NVIDIA wanted to give away 5 of those. How you win it is that we want to give these cards to people who have systems that need them. So show us your PC that's in need of an upgrade. Take a picture of your machine. Show us, upload it to Imager, upload your photo there. We also want like screenshots of CPU-Z and GPU-Z. It's also, I think we had an entry earlier today for somebody that did not have a PCI Express slot. So that would be a requirement to use the card. So that's not the best system to send in. And then we have a little form here to put your name, email, your computer picture, your CPU-Z screenshot, etc. And why do you want this upgrade? Why do you want this? And we'll run that until March 13th. So next week's podcast, we'll talk about this contest one more time, and then we'll announce our winners after that. So let's jump in and talk about the hardware that happened this week. We have 2 stories from Alan. 2, more than 1, less than 3, not 0.
Bigger than a bed box?
One of the products, no, they're both smaller than a bread box. One of them, in fact, is the Intel SSD 730. So this is a brand new SSD line for consumers from Intel. It is using an Intel custom controller for the first time. Not for the first time, for the first time again. We'll say again.
Yeah.
Right? We're bringing it back around circle. So tell me about this drive and why it should or should not interest us.
So this is actually Intel using their SATA 6GB controller that they introduced last year in the data center series solid-state drive. So there was a couple of data center series drives that came out, S3500 and S3700. Their differences were basically they were using different kind of flash. And it's an 8-channel controller, so slightly different from the previous 10-channel Intel branded controller of all those that you see on the stream there. Yeah, there was that 10-channel controller was used over and over and over and over and over again in just about everything that Intel was making. Then when they finally went to 6 gigabit, they got there by way of basically their own silicon was not ready as far as a controller goes. So they went there by way of Marvell first and the SSD 510, and then Sandforce and the SSD 520. And that kind of, closed or got them through the gap there, if you will. But then those data center drives came out, and then they took that controller and basically took. I mean, it's kind of difficult for me to say they took that and then they kind of moved it over to a consumer drive. No, this is really a data center S3500, just with like maybe some slight firmware tweaks, and other than that, it's the same thing.
I mean, there are some significant. I mean, there are a couple of places in the performance results where there is a noticeable difference, right?
There are,
it's
and
been
that's because
tweaked for performance instead of reliability, I guess, maybe.
There are differences. They made it more of a consumer kind of drive, and they did overclock the controller as compared to the data center model. So
Say that again. They overclocked the controller on the SSD. That is like this. They overclocked the SSD.
Intel overclocked a product.
And it's under a warranty.
And it's under a 5-year warranty. And there's no way to not overclock this SSD. When they first started talking about the possibility of this drive, they were kind of toying around with the idea of, well, what if we made something in the SSD toolbox that, could let the consumer just
I like that idea.
Like move a slider. Well, there were a lot of people that didn't like that idea. I mean, I thought it was kind of cool, but it's.
I mean, the idea it's not. If you overclock your graphics card, your system crashes. If you overclock
or you get
your
like
SSD,
some artifacts, or
you lose all your data.
Yeah, so that's kind of, a bad customer experience territory. Like,
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to find out that you pushed your SSD too far by you corrupted your registry and you're reinstalling Windows. That's
Fine.
Yeah, but they were able to get away with a pretty hefty overclock on their own and certify the drive that way and ship it that way. So the flash memory bus, which is just basically think about that as your memory bandwidth on your memory clock on your video card overclocking, or CPU overclocking, or system overclocking, whatever you want to call it. The frequency that operated at was, I think, 83 megahertz on the data center series drives, and probably on a lot of other drives, or even slower if you go back a few generations. And they upped that to 100 megahertz. So they're actually using a faster. It's basically like a faster mode for the flash memory, because flash memory has different modes it can operate at, and like 83 is one of those, and the next one up is 100. So they basically just switched modes to a faster one.
Okay.
The controller, the internal clock of the controller is 400 megahertz on the data center series, and it's running at 600 on this. So that's a 50% overclock to the whole controller, which is pretty drastic, right? And it definitely does scale, right? When you overclock something like that, the performance definitely does scale. So if you look at our IOs per second on the review, you can tell we also included the data center S3500 in there, and it's pretty much a nice, neat.
So in this graph, the blue line is the SSD 730, so the new overclock drive. The red one is kind of like stays right just below it by about that amount.
Yeah.
You can see that on all those different tests as well. Yeah, here it's a little bit easier to see on the database-based test. So you can see what the overclocking does for scale. And it's interesting because SSDs are so fast that you might even be one of those people like I was. It's like, well, what's it even going to mean, right? Like, is it even going to show anything different in performance if you overclock it? And clearly it does. It
does show a difference, and it also helps it in that respect, because that controller in the data center series was actually kind of lagged behind even some of the consumer drives.
Now, one
So
of the
there-
performance results that does show a difference between the consumer drive and the enterprise drive is like our kind of custom file copy test, which you described in the video that we posted the review is kind of a very single-threaded, single queue depth type DOS-based.
It's a single-threaded, and it's also kind of a consumery thing to do, right? You don't see data centers just copying large files from the same drive to the same drive, right?
Sure.
And then the file creation actually was there was a huge difference in that guy as well. So we're talking like it completed the test in less than half the time.
That's a huge difference.
Basically, like better than 2 times, right? And that test is a single-threaded command line based. It's just a utility that creates a group of files on the drive, right? And yeah, this new model does handle that very, very well. It actually handles it better than most of the competition as well. Actually, I think all the competition that we've ran this particular test through. And that's a single-threaded kind of a test, and it's a not really optimized for modern systems kind of test. So there's some things, some apps will still access a drive this way. Some games will actually still access a drive this way. Games that are games that do background level loads those are most likely a single-threaded level load going on because you have all the other threads for the game itself running. So you don't want to, if you throw half your threads at the drive I/O, it's going to negatively impact the game, right? So if you have a drive that can handle a level load kind of a task much faster, if it's single-threaded, then it's better overall, right? So those kinds of things.
Now,
but kind of hard to test, unfortunately.
There is because it is overclocked. When you think of like CPUs and GPUs, you tend to think higher voltages, higher temperatures. What gets affected in that regard with this SSD?
So for this particular model, nothing. But there's a reason, and that's because the data center drives were already had those voltage levels high. They already had, it's kind of a power hungry, just a power hungry controller, just in general.
But it does get warm.
It does get warm. I would recommend against having this sit in a bottom corner tray of a case with absolutely no airflow going over it, especially if you're gonna kind of be using it a lot. I was kind of now I look at those cases that have like just the 2.5 inch bays like just kind of sandwiched on the side of the other bays, just like kind of between some piece of metal and the side of the case.
Laptop installation, not a good idea.
A laptop's probably not a good idea. It'll probably eat into your battery life on a laptop pretty noticeably, actually, because the SandForce... Go on.
Was this warmer than the enterprise drive?
No, they're about the same. I went back and I plugged in the S3500 afterwards, just out of sheer curiosity, and I was like, okay. Yeah, it's just
so it's just the controller in itself, not necessarily the overclocking that was forcing that issue.
No, not from what I can tell. They run about the same.
Okay.
And even the ratings from Intel are the same. They rate both of them at 5 watts.
So they're binning the higher clockable versions of the controller for the consumer line.
Yes, and then alternatively, they're binning the slightly lesser grade flash memory for the consumer line.
Yeah. Worth pointing out the skull logo on the SSD 730.
Yes, the skull logo.
People who have been around for a while will remember the Skull Trail system that Intel launched a long time ago. What socket was that, Josh?
13 something?
Was it dual 1366?
I think so.
Maybe it was like their first kind of like reintroduction of dual processor platforms. They used this logo, and then eventually like their whole motherboard division kind of used this logo. Well, their motherboard division's kind of gone, and so the SSD group kind of said, hey, let's just take that IP, we'll just slap it on here and make it Enthusiast branded, which I think it looks cool. Although it should have an LED light underneath it and it should glow.
Wait, it was the Xeon base, so it was like 771 or 772, or I forget which.
Oh yeah,
one.
Because I actually had the Xeon based, the V8 platform was what they called it before, because it was 2 quad core processors.
And it was 771.
771. Yep. Okay, I thought it was before 1366. I knew it was old.
Yeah.
We used it. We still have the case with like the system in there that we used to use for video editing. We don't take things apart very often.
You reviewed it just over 6 years ago.
All right.
February 4th, 2008.
All right.
So
Alan, did you really just say data centers? Because data is the guy you go home to when you're young. So is there a center with all these datas in there instead of data?
Oh, sure. Okay.
You can reach through the computer and smack it if you want.
I'll just strangle you right now.
I'll save it for CES. So what's kind of cool about this just overall is that, first of all, they're going for $1 gig or less, which is, I hate to say it, kind of on the high side now.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have especially after last holiday season, you're talking 60, 70 cents a gig for SSDs for most consumer grade ones. And even now, you kind of still see them for that.
Yep.
But this is essentially a data center drive.
Data
it really
center.
is. Yeah, data center. Okay. It's the same controller. The flash is the MLC high endurance technology flash that's in the data center drives.
Good.
Right? And it has the same warranty. Now, the rating is a little bit less as far as your gig per day writes. I think it's 70 gig per day
70,
rating.
yeah.
If you have 70 gig to write to your SSD every single day for 5 years, then you will tax that, I suppose. But yeah, it's the only other place you can get flash memory that's rated that highly is in those enterprise units. So this is a consumer drive with pretty much consumer price. We can't really complain so much that it's $1 a gig. Still, we're still in that territory. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now, we can complain about $1 a gig. But yeah, you're getting good warranty. You're getting pretty good price, especially out of Intel. And Intel's SSDs are among the highest as far as reliability goes. Their reliability is, you never really hear issues, right? I think Ken managed to break one.
That's because they send out their hitmen to take care of the people who have had issues.
Yeah, Ken did manage to break one.
The only reason Alan was protected when he had his issues because he was in the military.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not anymore. Oh, crap.
That's it. They're coming for me.
All right, so go to PCPro.com, check out the full review of that, and you can see the video we did as well when Alan was in town for a little bit more discussion on the Intel SSD 730. Looks interesting. Maury posted a review of the Asus Maximus 6 Formula motherboard. This is a little bit of an interesting option because it's an ROG board. It's one of their kind of gaming line high-end boards, but it also has the thermal armor that we're kind of used to seeing on the Tough series, like the Sabertooth boards. You can also hear it actually has integrated water cooling support as well. This is a Z87 motherboard. It's on the steep side at $329, but you can see here some of the feature set that it lists. The ROG armor, cross chill is what they call it, hybrid air and water cooling with the 1/4-inch threaded fittings. It does have a lot of Asus's high-end, like the DigiPlus 3 power delivery system, Blackwing chokes, which sounds awesome. 90% efficiency MOSFETs, 10K black metal capacitors. It does have a MPCIe combo, M.2 socket for SSD, mini PCIe 2.0, anything like that.
Supreme FX.
Of course. Supports supports SLI or 3-way Crossfire X. That does not support 3-way SLI, would be my guess on that. 10 SATA 3 ports. That's a lot. I mean,
well, why don't you look at the pictures? I'm sure he'll do the pack-in, and if they support SLI 3-way, they'll have the 3-way SLI bridge.
I don't know why you needed to make that sound along with that, but okay. I just think this is a really good-looking board. I love the black-red color combination still, and the armor on it makes it look pretty cool. The armor apparently did have... It didn't have a fan, like an active fan that some of the Tough series boards include, or I think all of them include, and Maury kind of knocked him a little bit for that.
How much does that thing weigh?
Does it really need it? I guess is the question.
Does the Tough series really need it? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where...
Yeah, I guess the Shroud made sense when there was a fan. Right?
Yeah.
Because then you were ducting...
Correct.
I remember their argument about that, like a couple of CESs ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, you
if
can
there's
see
no fan, yeah.
connectivity-wise, there's quite a few USB ports on here, DisplayPort, HDMI, analog and digital audio outputs, and a gigabit Ethernet port. I'm sure that's an Intel Gigi controller. You can see the PCI Express slots there. Ooh, Molex connector. A lot of cool stuff.
You also
on
notice
here.
there's no sign of a CMOS battery anywhere.
Oh,
It's
Good
hidden.
Lord, that's a lot of SATA.
You like that SATA? You like that SATA? So much SATA. Yep.
Yeah, what did Maury say about the...
The CMOS battery was difficult to get to. Not a surprise. You can see, I mean, the Armor causes, a couple of other issues. Like maybe it's a little bit more difficult to install and remove these fan headers to get to these power connectors. I mean, you're asking for a piece of plastic to kind of cover the majority of the board. I mean, that's...
Well, and chances are you're
be
not
what you
going to be
want.
buying a closed case if you buy this kind of board. You're going to want some see-through.
But what else is the purpose of that? I mean, what is the purpose of that armor?
It's bling.
It's bling?
It's about it.
protects from people using screwdrivers grinding across traces.
That actually happens more often than
When they're removing their CMOS battery?
yes.
And
Obviously.
installing a heatsink.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
destroyed a dual CPU tie-in board that way. One
you now?
slip of a screwdriver and it was done.
Well, don't do that.
I've done that once. It's
Oh, it's a
not
horrible
fun.
feeling.
It wasn't that expensive a board, though.
Now, if you want to check out the BIOS, or as JJ would prefer me call it, the UEFI features, go check out the story that Maury posted. I do want to. We'll go to pricing. It's $309 at Newegg, maybe like $330 on Amazon, some various places. Weakness is lack of easy access to the CMOS battery right there in black and white.
Oh,
Lack
even
of active
capitalized
cooling on the
CMOS.
channel, and power components in close proximity to underboard socket plate.
have you been drinking?
You should scroll to the first commenter.
Maybe you should start.
Yeah, that first commenter thinks those three weaknesses are really, really serious. 2 thumbs
Yeah.
down. But I mean, that's dumb. Board layout and design was good. Good BIOS design.
much
Intel,
SATA.
Intel gigabit networking is always a plus.
Very biosed.
Cross-chill hybrid VRM cooling solution, 802.11 AC and M.2 SATA support. So I mean, that's a lot of stuff on that board. That's a lot of motherboard. That is a lot of motherboard. Speaking of a lot of things, I was going to say something. I don't know. Did you get the 8 terabyte model of this unit, Ellen?
What? 8 terabytes?
Yeah, of the MyCloud EX2.
Oh, sorry. 4 terabytes.
So, okay, well,
It was 2 by 2.
2x2. All right. So, also released this week in the world of storage is the Western Digital MyCloud EX2. This is a newer version of the MyCloud devices that takes you from 1 hard drive to 2 hard drives, which I think was probably our biggest complaint about the original device. The idea of the MyCloud is that, as the name would imply, you're creating a cloud-based system that you can access your data from wherever, share data with whoever you want, without using third-party services like Dropbox or Amazon or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and it was kind of hard to argue that if you had a single point of failure on the hard drive.
Yeah, right. Without redundancy in that drive, like if it wants you to store a bunch of fairly important things that you're sharing with people on it, it makes sense that you would want to have a RAID 1 implementation there. Does that come? Does this come RAID 1 or RAID 0 by default?
This comes out of the box RAID 0.
That's okay.
No, it's not dumb. Or sorry, RAID 1.
Oh, okay.
The not dumb one.
There you go. Okay, now it makes more sense. Continue.
Yes. So it comes out of the box redundant, pre-configured that way. It actually even says it like in the literature and everything. Like if you order this with the drives installed, you're going to get it. They're going to come with RAIDs, and the RAIDs are going to be pre-configured in a mirrored RAID. Now, in the defense of the single drive model, it actually could do. There was a couple of methods of offsite backup that it would do, but they're paid services. You have to subscribe to them and that kind of stuff, right? But this lets you get away with a little bit more redundancy on your own and without having to do the much greater cost of a MyCloud EX4, which is the 4-bay that we reviewed last year. But this is a nice, neat, tidy. It looks like the MyBook Duo line. Remember that? Like designed to look like a little bookshelf kind of thing, right? Same deal. Actually, it looks like the same exact physical case, except they made some slight cosmetic changes to the front. They have LEDs on the front just to show drive activity and just some more ports in the back, right? Or different ports in the back, obviously, because you have gigabit power and a couple of USB 3 ports.
Gotcha.
On the back. And the idea there is you can just plug in, you can hang a couple of extra USB devices off of it, and it'll mount them as additional drives under the network share. And they're your typical kind of network attached storage.
Now, I have this picture up of popping open the lid on this unit. In reality, you probably aren't going into this section of the machine often or ever, right?
Just when a drive fails.
So almost
that's the only time you would do it.
Okay. You
but
can buy
it's easy,
a diskless version of this, I guess, right? So
they do sell a diskless version, yes.
Right. So if you had a couple of spare hard drives that you decided you wanted to use for that, you could do that, I guess.
Yeah, and it's actually the price wasn't too bad. I think it's a couple $100 for diskless. Actually, it might be a little. I thought it was a little bit less. I think it was like
it might be $299 or something like that.
Yeah. And the pricing is still pretty competitive, even with drives installed.
The hardware is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, at least, right? You've got 2 hard drives running in RAID. You've got networking. You've got USB. What kind of differentiates this is kind of like the software that comes with. So what did you think about the implementation and the idea behind the MyCloud and what the software was like, how easy it was to use, that type of thing?
The software has been pretty consistent throughout. So like, say if you went back and you looked at the MyCloud EX4 review, same deal. Software is almost identical. In fact, the only real differences I saw between the X2 and the EX4 was just when you went into RAID options, you had, more limits as far as you couldn't do a RAID 5, right? Okay. Because it's only two drives, so you're limited. You're RAID 0, RAID 1, that sort of thing. But all the other options in every single page, I think the only other thing that was missing was the options that had to do with the dual gigabit that the EX4 has versus the single gigabit that this model has. So you didn't have extra like multi-link options and stuff like that. But really, it's exactly the same, other than those points. All the apps are the same. All the backup options are the same. You can there's like even an app where you can have this thing downloading torrents in the background.
Totally legal ones.
Well, whatever torrent file you throw at it, it'll just do it.
Totally legal ones.
Yes. So only throw totally legal torrents at it.
Correct.
But it will download whatever torrent you give it. And so it's a nice, neat kind of a GUI to it. It's pretty flexible. The only thing that I discovered while testing this one, and actually it turns out it's an issue with all of the MyCloud series, is that if you plug in a USB device like a flash drive that's exFAT formatted.
Okay.
That format?
Yeah, sure, why not?
It's like an extended version of FAT32. It's like a lower overhead than NTFS, but you can still have really large files.
Okay.
Stuff like that. It can't read them. Apparently, it can't mount exFAT. I don't know why. But
is that a temporary thing, maybe? You think that's something they'll address?
I don't know. They haven't addressed it yet, and there's a support page on the Western Digital site that clearly states here's all the partition formats formatted, and that one is supported, and that one's not there. Now, it's granted, it's not often you're going to plug a greater than 32 gigabyte flash drive into the back of your MyCloud device.
Right.
Right? But if you did, and that was the format, it's not going to be able to read it. External drives, regular external hard drives, all those things, it's going to be able to read anything like that, no problem. So that was kind of a weird oddity there. But that whole software suite on the device works pretty seamlessly.
What about the mobile apps and stuff?
There's mobile apps, everything, and that's actually on my phone. Even that one screenshot where you're adding another device. It really is that simple. It sees it on your network. You add it, and then from that point forward, even if you're not at your house, it still reaches back via Western Digital and kind of is able to get through your router. Because the MyCloud is reaching out to Western Digital, letting it know it's alive and such, and then you can get to it from being away from your house. Right.
So it looks like it performed pretty well too. Write speeds over the network at about 65 megs a second. Read speeds at just over 100.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal. Usually that's the downside of these network attached storage devices, especially the lower power and kind of the smaller form factor ones, is that the CPU is not that great. It just doesn't have that much processing horsepower, or the firmware that's based off of, or the OS is based off of, isn't really that efficient for whatever reason. But all those reasons seem to not really be that much of an issue, because 100 meg per second over gigabit, and I wasn't even using jumbo frames.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
The only real ding I can see there is the write speeds to USB for some reason.
Yeah, they're about 33 megs a second.
Yeah, and I thought I did the write test first, and I thought maybe it was only negotiating USB 2, because that's the speed you would get, like maxed out USB 2.
Yeah, really high max.
But sure enough, when I did the reads, it was, even faster, because I was using a flash drive, but it was way faster, not way faster, but it was actually a little bit faster than even reading from its own internal disks. So, but I would argue you're going to be reading from this guy the majority of the time anyway.
What do you think about the prices here? It's $200 for the diskless, as I am very careful to pronounce that correctly. $370 for 4 terabyte, $470 6 terabyte, $570 8 terabyte. Obviously, those are the MSRPs.
I would just it's just a question of math, right? It comes with Reds, so if you were gonna buy this thing, it's not really any difference if you purchase diskless and add your own that you just bought versus, purchasing it with disks pre-installed. So if you can get the diskless model and then order a couple of Reds separately, and it ends up cheaper than the other one, just go that way. It's really not going to be any different.
Gotcha. All right, that's pretty cool. I see that, and I see the performance of it, and I'm like, well, we could get rid of a Thunderbolt array with a NUC that we currently use for this exact same purpose, and we have less functionality. Faster. Well, I mean, we're limited by the gigabit Ethernet speed still, right?
You are, but this one is limited more on the writes. So if you're worried about the writes, this is the bottleneck.
That's true. Yeah,
right?
Maybe.
Even to its own internal disk, it's only getting 65.
Yeah.
So there's more room there, and that's.
I'm usually more concerned about the read speeds, because that's usually when I'm in a hurry, when I'm copying games from our network drive over to a local drive. But we'll talk about it at a different time.
This would saturate it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, that should as well. That's more of a configuration issue we need to figure out. But we'll talk about that another time. We're going to talk now with Josh a little bit about...
A little bit.
Just a little bit. AMD releases the AM1 platform, the socketed Kabini APU. What's interesting about this is that we really saw this at CES in January. I think the first place I saw it was at the MSI booth. And I was like, hey, what's this? And I looked it up. It's like, I've never seen this socket before. What's this? And they go, oh, yeah, that's a low power APU socket. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Never heard of that before. Oh, well, moved on with life. Did a post on it, did some pictures of it. But it turns out they're just now kind of officially announcing this product. What are we looking at? What is the AM1 platform?
It is a very low power and low cost platform that is socketed, so you can swap out APUs at will if you so desire. These are going to be very inexpensive, very low power products. It's going to be a 25 watt TDP pretty much across the board. From the highest end, 4 core running at 2.05 gigahertz with 128 stream unit GCN product in there running at, oh gosh, I forget the number, but it's like 600 megahertz. It's not going to be real hot. It's not going to be incredibly powerful, but it's still going to be pretty decent for what you want and what you get. $60 is the price range that they're looking for the top end combination. But right now, I believe that in some areas that are actually selling this board, the combination, that the motherboards are coming in around $60. I would expect those to go down in price as
Really?
supplies improve. But yeah, I mean, this is a product that's aimed primarily at South America, Africa, China, some European countries in the East. I wouldn't say Ukraine right now.
So, like, we're just talking about developing areas that require ultra low cost hardware.
Yes.
It's interesting because this slide here, they're comparing it directly to Bay Trail, and Bay Trail is going into some of those same areas, right? Like, that's where some of those systems are going. But Intel was still very upfront about promoting Bay Trail as a platform to be used for high quality devices here in North America, right? So you've got the Asus T100, you've got the HP machine that we'll talk about a little bit later that are saying, hey, we can build good devices on Bay Trail for these emerging markets as well as these kind of grounded markets, and we can kind of use that platform both ways. And it seems more like AMD is, they're not saying that, hey, this is going to be for tablet markets or super small form factor, machines in the same level, right? Like, their power draw is a little bit higher than what we see at a Bay Trail.
That's correct. And their overall performance is really pretty comparable. The only advantage that they have, I believe Bay Trail uses an Imagination Tech mobile type graphics. Yes or no? I can't remember.
I don't know. Ken says no.
I think so. But anyway, and Kabini uses the GCN cores. So 3D
the answer is,
performance.
sorry, hold on before we go on. Some Bay Trail uses Intel HD graphics and some uses third-party Power VR. It's the difference of like Bay Trail M versus T, I think, something like that. Anyway, go ahead.
But anyway, so overall, I would say AMD has an advantage in performance. They do not have an advantage in power consumption. Intel is, a lot more locked down on that. But when you're talking a desktop type processor, 25 watts is nothing. A power supply to handle that and the rest of the system is, again, dirt cheap. And so it's got faster memory support, except it doesn't do dual channel. I think the higher end Bay Trail does support dual channel.
Yep.
But you've got better graphics. You've got pretty good CPU performance, and it's a true SoC. And so it's got 2 SATA 6G ports off of it. It's got 2 USB 3.0 ports. It's got 8 USB 2.0 ports. And so that 25 watts encompasses all of really the major board processing power, basically I/O, memory, and CPU and GPU. So it's it's inexpensive, which is the big push. I mean, people in these areas will not care that their power draw is in the 25 to 30 watt range rather than 12 to 20 watts with an Intel Bay Trail. When you start adding up all the different parts, it's going to be pretty much non-existent. Yeah. So they're really aiming at this area. They're hoping to get some traction, get the name out there, seeding the area with products, and hopefully when they finally get 20 and 16 nanometer stuff going, you can upgrade these computers with an APU that will be quite a bit more powerful than what we have now.
In theory.
In theory. They haven't talked much about putting BEMA into this socket. I think that they're going to kind of skip that for a while because BEMA really is only a more finely tuned version of Kabini. There's nothing major in difference. It's kind of like Trinity to Richland is Kabini to BEMA. I mean, they've improved kind of the envelope for power consumption and performance, but it's not a massive jump up.
Gotcha.
Are there any other questions you have for the AM1 platform?
No, I'm curious. like, so we have one, we have another one coming in. This is a Bay Trail platform. This is the Gigabyte J1800ND2H that we're doing some testing on now. And I don't think we're far enough along it that we know what the power draw of this is. What's interesting is that this has standard ATX power connectors and everything on it, and we have like the power supplies we have out on the test bench we use for like benchmarking stuff, like 800 watts, 1,000 watts, and I believe maybe some of that, some maybe like idle power draw is part of the power supply, maybe inefficiency at those super low wattages. So we're going to try to get something smaller in to test some of the power on that too. But I think it's really interesting to see both of these mentalities, right? You know, AMD is very much kind of we're going to wait and see on the North American market. You know, that'll be out, maybe it'll be out eventually, but it's not our target. And Intel's kind of blanketing it. I'm sure they're still putting a high focus on those emerging markets, but I'm very curious to see what kind of system we can build out of Bay Trail for, I don't know, some kind of desktop usage or home theater usage. We will see. We are going to take a quick break to thank our new podcast sponsor. Again, this is the return of long-loved Rajiv. Everybody here knows him.
Rajiv's long time.
Just a long time.
Long time, Rajiv.
The all-new Rajiv.
The all-new Rajiv.
I asked him what I could get for $5, and he showed me.
Yeah, he did. He did. But what he's going to show us now is a new set of a new gaming headset from Coolermaster.
The Pulsar aluminum gaming headset by Coolermaster features 42mm drivers that deliver clear highs and powerful bass, immersing you in the action for a perfected audio experience. The aluminum ear plates can be customized to your personal style for a truly unique look. Built for customization and optimized for sound, you can learn more about the Pulsar at coolermaster-usa.com.
That was it?
I have my mute button down. Go ahead, Josh.
I thought it would be longer. I paid him $5. He said long time.
Well, I mean, $5 doesn't go as far as it used to these days, and you know, he was dealing with you, so I think people just usually rush to get out of the room when all possible. So, but thank you very much to Coolermaster. Thank you very much to Rajiv. Check out those Pulsar headsets, and again, we thank them for their support of the PC Perspective podcast. So let's move on to talk about some news. We got quite a bit to go through. We'll rush through as much as we can. The first couple of topics need more discussion. This was posted just a couple of hours ago. Scott made this post for us. Microsoft, along with AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, and Qualcomm, will announce the DirectX 12 at GDC 2014. Now, what's interesting is I got this news on the way to dinner, looked at my phone, and it said several people that I follow have followed
DX12.
Twitter account DX12. And I go, that's funny. And I click on it, and there's a link to an MSDN blog on it that says basically this. Join us at GDC March 20th, 2014 at 10 a.m. And it's got AMD, Intel, NVIDIA, and Qualcomm's logos on there. So last week we talked about the rumors of DX12 based on session descriptions. Clearly now the everything is confirmed. They're going to talk about DX12. They're not mentioning a release date for it. But it's obviously going to happen. Not a surprise to us at this point. What do you think about the inclusion of Qualcomm's logo on here?
It's very important. They, well, why don't you just call up your good friend Eric Demers?
I could.
You could, and he could tell you a little bit because Qualcomm is powering a metric behind load of mobile devices. And
why is DirectX interested in those devices?
Why is Microsoft interested in getting into a mobile environment that is high growth?
You think this is to get their operating system into more Qualcomm-powered smartphones?
You might have a point.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of interesting that they don't have the Imagination guys in there yet.
Right. Obviously, we don't know that we don't think that they're out completely, but
yeah.
Intel is in there. Intel uses a lot of Power VR in its Atom SoCs, so we'll have to see. It's interesting. It's confirmed now. We know when we're going to learn about it, March 20th at 10 a.m. So I will be there. The secret is out now.
And really, it's about damn time, because DX10 was introduced in 2007, 2006, I think, with the NVIDIA G80, followed by about 8 months after with the old HD 2900 XT. And then another 3 years after that, we had the first DX11 implementations. No, 2009, because we saw it at QuakeCon. And so, yeah, it's been 5 years, and we've had two small iterations, 11.1 and 11.2.
Yeah, and NVIDIA never supported either of those iterations.
Either of those, no. And so this is kind of a big deal. So it's interesting to see that probably word got out around April of 2013 that AMD was working on Mantle and what they were attempting to do, what the advantages of Mantle are. And I'm pretty sure that other guys started thinking, hey, well, and plus, okay, AMD's working with both Microsoft and Sony, and they're, close to the metal type implementations on the consoles. Word probably leaked out a long time ago. So it's nice that Microsoft is finally kind of catching up and saying, hey, you know what? We need to kind of update DirectX because it's really, really inefficient in terms of CPU usage with what we want to do. And we could, utilize the CPU resources in many other different ways that will accentuate our product. So they're kind of like 3 days late and a couple of dollars short, but we're going to get there eventually.
We talked about a lot, but in a I wonder if type fashion last week. But I think most of what we said still stands in regards to what does it mean to Mantle now going forward. I think it's a very likely thing that if DirectX 12 comes out and claims to have a lot of the same close to the metal, improvements that Mantle implements, that the drive to develop for Mantle will decrease. Right. Maybe DirectX comes out and it doesn't have those. And I imagine AMD will be on hand at GDC to talk about the differences between DX12 and Mantle. I'm sure that will be part of their
You know what? AMD does not want to support an API. They simply do not want to support that because that.
You think they don't want to support Mantle long term?
That involves engineering resources that they just don't have. But you know what? If they can get a leg up on the competition, namely Intel and NVIDIA, with implementing something that's close to what Microsoft is developing now, they, again, when software drivers and support comes out for DX12, they'll be a couple of steps ahead because they develop something very, very similar.
You think so?
I think that's what they're hoping. Now, whether or not they can actually execute that strategy,
right?
That's another big question.
Right. So here's a couple of things we don't know, and we may not even know on March 20th is, will this require a new hardware revision? Will some of the capability that DX12 will offer become backwards compatible with existing hardware, right? If you look at what AMD was able to do with Mantle, right, they were able to go back into a couple generations or so back into the architecture and offer advantages, at least in theory. Will DirectX 12 be able to do that? Or, will NVIDIA be able to do that, working in the constraints of DX12? I think that will be an interesting question. The other question will be, when will this actually be available? It's not going to be available March 20th. You're not going to download it March 20th. It's not coming on the Windows 8.1 Update 1. I know a little bit about it. When it becomes available will determine a lot of this as well. So hopefully we'll get a better idea of that then, whether it be early beta, will it be Windows 9, will it be Windows 8.2, what is it going to be when this stuff actually is made available. So we've got that exciting news that will happen in 15 days. So damn it, there goes spring. Speaking of AMD and graphics cards, they did launch a new GPU. the Radeon R9 280, you can see we have a photo of the very first R9 280 in production right here. It came...
Where do you get those wonderful silver markers?
Silver Sharpie. Silver Sharpie.
Nice. Very nice.
They're used, I think I had it originally for like sports autographs when I was signing all the sports balls that I signed for sports autographs.
What?
Or when I go to get things signed, you've got to have, like, depending on what you're getting signed, you either want to have a black Sharpie, you want to have a silver Sharpie. If you're signing on a black T-shirt or a hat or something like that, you get a silver Sharpie. It's just.
But if you're flashing your chest, you want the black one?
Yeah, you know, that just makes sense. Or sometimes you ask them to use both, so you get kind of that, like, hold them both, and you get that cool 3D effect from it. Whichever one. So the R9 280 is actually not this card. This is a Radeon HD 7950 boost with a piece of gaffer's tape on it with R9 280 written on it in a Sharpie, as Josh alluded to. So I know it looked very realistic. So maybe you thought, oh, this is probably just a rendering or something.
You know, if PNY supported AMD products, that would be what it looked like.
Yeah. So what about the R9 280 is interesting. It is a Tahiti-based GPU. It has 1,792 GPU cores. It has a boost clock speed of up to 933, 112 texture, 3 gigs of memory. It looks very familiar. It is an HD 7950 that goes from 925 megahertz to 933 megahertz.
That's like 8 megahertz.
It's pretty close to 8 megahertz.
If you're my son, he would say that's 6 megahertz, but he's got issues in math.
The other thing on pricing is we're only talking about a $20 difference between this and the 280X. The problem is, so the 280X is supposed to be $299. It's closer to $399 or $420, $430 to actually buy them. So when this actually starts to show up, we'll see what pricing comes at. They did use an interesting line with this. Where was it? Here it is. So the information we got, we didn't get any sample, hence our gaff tape version of the 7950, says the AMD Radeon R9 280 will become available at a starting SEP, which is suggested e-tail pricing, of $279 the first week of March, with wider availability the second week of March. Following the exceptional demand of the entire R9 series, we believe the introduction of the R9 280 will help ensure that every gamer who plans to purchase an R9 series graphics card has an opportunity to do so.
That's right. Hands off Bitcoin miners. It says so right in the ad.
It says so right there. I underlined it. Get off our GPUs. I don't know what they're attempting to do with this, because yeah, if you're just...
It's $20 cheaper than the MSRP of the 280X.
Yeah, but miners would just buy that too. Like, if they're just introducing a new SKU, it's not going to save anything, right? What's going to save it is if they're releasing a whole bunch of additional inventory into the market, right? Maybe this is coming in now. They're getting their second wave of like revamped R-based R-series GPUs in from Taiwan. The cards are shipped. They're ready to go into the market, and that's what's going to kind of fix things. And we'll talk about that here too. But just releasing a 280 is not going to make it better.
Isn't it interesting that instead of the 7950 coming with 2 6-pins, this is a 6-pin and an 8-pin? And remember how we talked about how it seems like the binning on the 280X versus the 7970, the 280X ran hotter and pulled a little bit more power.
Did it? Yeah, I didn't even really... I mean, I recognized that they had a 6 and 6 versus a 6 and 8. I just thought it was, hey, it's really easy if we just use the exact same PCB and card and board designs and change the BIOS on it, and now we have a 280 instead of a 280X. I don't know. It's so weird, everything that they've done. I think they're almost out of cards to rebrand, though.
They are.
I think they're pretty close. I
don't know. NVIDIA did it for a couple of generations.
What'd you say, Alan?
Then they'll just start over.
You're right. So now it's the R9 370X instead of the R9 280. I mean, they could do that. They could do that. So this isn't actually for sale yet. We'll see if it shows up. It is still technically inside the first week of March. so they're allowed to not have it. We did get our first sample in, but I haven't seen it for sale anywhere yet. And it is
MSI Gaming?
nope. It's a Sapphire card. It's a Sapphire card.
Sapphire.
So there's that. But let's talk about another maybe more positive thing that happened with AMD GPUs this week. It's not there anymore. Don't get really excited after I say this. This week there was an R9 290X selling for $549 on Newegg. It lasted for a day, like a full 24 hours or so. There was one power color reference based R9 290X for $549, and then it jumped up $70 to the next one to go to the HIS reference card, which is identical, essentially, for $629. So if I click on this, it is still in. It's in stock again.
But $599, $50 more.
Son of a damn it.
50.
Son of a damn it. Let me click this link and make sure that we didn't get a surprise listing. Nope. Oh, we got one at $589.
Ooh, the HIS went down in price.
Yeah, man.
Randomly pick prices anymore?
What I would guess, if in all seriousness, if I had to guess, AMD is trying desperately to get these prices down, and Newegg doesn't want to do it, and their partners don't want to do it. So AMD's like, all right, Power Color, it's your turn for a day. HIS, it's your turn for a day. Sapphire, it's your turn for a day. I don't know. But if the lowest price custom cooled one is $649. The Gigabyte OC, what do they call that? WindForce model, which is $100 over sticker over what it should be, maybe $70 over what it should be for the non-reference models, but good but not great. So I hypothesize in this that is it possible that the draw of coin mining has reached a peak and the pricing of AMD GPUs could stabilize? Is it with all the crashing of Bitcoin and all the millions of dollars that are being stolen away from people?
And the suicides of all the executives.
Suicide of these people that ran these things. Is it maybe
guess
now?
what? Bitcoin's higher than it's been in 3 weeks right now.
Really?
Yeah.
That sucks. That's crappy.
Yeah, but Bitcoin is all ASICs. Litecoin, Dogecoin,
Yes, but
Chuck Norris coin.
the value of Litecoin is tied to the value of Bitcoin.
Related note, I just refreshed the page and now we have bad news on our next story. Was the R7 265 was in stock today.
Throughout most of today, in fact, about an hour ago.
Yeah, AMD sent over a link with it was for sale for $149. That's the key point there. It was in sale for $149, which is what it's supposed to be sold for, but it is now not in stock.
Did you know I posted that link on our chat and it was still in stock? And within 5 minutes.
When I loaded up this page to begin with, it was in stock.
Yeah.
But we saw lots of links floating around to this card, so it's not surprising. I don't know if they had a dozen or if they had 144 of these cards in stock, or if they had 1,000 of them. Who knows? But they're gone now, so don't worry about it. And will they be $149 when they come back in stock? That will be the key. Because here's what's interesting. This card at $149 beats this GTX 750 Ti quite handily, actually, in terms of performance. Right? It's much more power-hungry part by a lot, but it's a much better performing card too. So if you're just looking for a cheap high performance card, this would be the best option. If you're looking for cheap high performance low power, you got to have a much more complicated discussion. But it was in stock. It's not anymore. They're very, very close to falling outside of their promised end of February, early March, or at least time frame. But
they made it by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah. All right, let's run through a couple of other or a handful of other news items here. Jeremy, what do we know about this HP Bay Trail X360 convertible laptop, or did I just give everything away in the title?
Well, I mean, you did give quite a bit of it away right there. But it's yoga-ish in that it's got completely rotatable touchscreen top. Sorry?
Isn't it yoga-esque?
Yoga-esque, yoga-ish, yoga-like.
Yoga-lily?
Yeah. But it's a tiny little 11.6-inch laptop. With one of the things that I thought was a little bit weird is it's only got a 2-cell battery in it. So they're talking about 4.5 hours of use, which I would have looked at this and thought ultra portable that you were supposed to carry around all day long,
Yeah.
especially with a bay trail in it.
Yeah.
But for
But
whatever
you could
reason,
skip
and I'm
it
sure
across
it's
that
pure
lake.
weight, they went for a tiny battery. But, I mean, the base model is going to be about $390. For $460, you get more storage and a faster processor in it. So it's for, you know, to compare with a Chromebook, to compare with a Yoga, it's not bad. I still am not a fan of Beats audio, but hey, there are people that are out there that are. And for a little tiny device like this, it's kind of nice to have some good audio on it. But most of the thing is just, it's going to be fun to play with a bay trail. It's clocked at 2.166 gigahertz, and it's quad core, so you should have some decent power in there at a ridiculously portable size. And if you want, as you can see in the very last picture, you can flip that touchpad all the way around, so you've got the tablet with the keyboard sitting on the ground now.
Sweet. That's the HP.
But if you put it in your lap, you have another pointer you can use on that touchpad.
It takes a little getting used to, but once you're on the ball.
That is the HP Pavilion X30. And on a totally different note, Antec, Antec launches the HCP. I think that stands for High Current Platinum Professional, something like that. High Current Power, 1300 Platinum Power Supply for extreme crypto mining rigs. Yeah. Oh, this 1300 watt unit has 10 PCI Express power connectors. So you could run 5 R9 290Xs on it. In theory, 5 times 200, no, you couldn't. 5 times about 300 watts a piece is about 1500 watts, which is about more than 1300, which is about a bad idea. So you could do 4 plus another one.
I'm sure it would hack it.
Barely. You could barely do 4. You know, you got to get that Sempron processor going if you want to get to 4 on that. It's going to be an expensive unit. Looks like it'll be $312. But it does come with a generous 7-year warranty. And it's got an OC link thing there. I thought that was a Corsair. No?
It was a
Antec?
Corsair thing.
No?
OC link is Antec's linking two power supplies together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sweet. We can link multiple HCP 1300 platinum power supplies together.
It's safer than what the miners are currently doing and just bridging the ATX power on connector on the second one, so it's always on.
Ken, don't tell them that. That's one of our hopes for getting rid of them.
It's fine. They're all going to fry everything. Alan, could we arc weld with this power supply?
Most definitely.
Most definitely? Okay.
Most definitely.
That was the first comment in here. They wanted to know, but can you arc weld with it? So now
1300 watts, yeah, you're definitely in arc welding territory.
it's not so bad for $300.
It's what, 80 amps?
I don't know. Did it say
Something like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of mining and power supplies and such, Jeremy, did you see this blog post that Corsair put together?
Oh, yes. And seriously, guys, come on.
Looks familiar.
This is getting ridiculous. But so eventually they decided to weld themselves together a little case so that they could hang 5 HD 7970s and an R9 290X.
Notice the fans pointing straight down on everything as well.
It's probably a little bit warm.
We actually have...
just when we thought they were running out of encouragement, Corsair stepped in, built this thing, and I got to admit, he's going to do it. He's got one.
I've got one here. And actually, you can't see it, but right underneath here, underneath the pins, it actually says Bitcoin and Litecoin silk screened onto the PCB portion of this. And I have something I want to show you, and I want it to blow your mind. Okay.
Then show it to us.
Hold on. You got. Remember this? Mm-hmm. Remember this? What do you think? What do you think?
Inefficient.
GTX
I mean, if you can
780
fit 5 of
Ti.
the stinking cards on one motherboard with a low-power processor like the Sempron.
What about a low-power processor like the Bay Trail? What if you could take a Bay Trail processor and tie a GTX 780 Ti into it?
It'd feel a little inadequate, wouldn't it?
Then you would need
Wait a minute.
bunch of Bay Trail boards and processors to do the same thing as a Sempron with 5 or 6 PCIe slots.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about
Ryan.
for gaming, not mining.
Doesn't that
okay.
thing use? I don't know if it could power it over a ribbon that's like 2 feet long.
It has this Molex power connector,
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah.
skillfully soldered and hot glued to the PCB.
And it is standing
What could
up
go wrong?
tall to rub on that, touchpad.
What?
Nobody knows what you're
Damn
talking
it.
about anymore. You've totally flopped on that crap. So, anyway, Jeremy, finish off the thing here. Is this just Corsair saying, "Look what you can do with our power supplies and stuff"?
Well, yeah. I mean, they've stuck one of their 1500 watts on that system, the AX1500i. The I means that it's got the special connect to it.
It's intelligent.
But I can see that, as they sort of say, 35 teraflops is pretty impressive, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, even though you're not going to be gaming on it because, well, you can hook up mismatched GPUs like that, just don't expect them to function in that way. It is kind of neat to see just somebody put this all together. I just like the fact that not even Corsair could get their hands on more than one R90 290X.
Oh, yeah, nice. Huh. So there you go. It's the end of our world still. Let's see. I'm going to skip through a couple of these things. Asus releases a passively cooled J1800i-C Bay Trail motherboard. You can see a picture of it here. It looks very familiar to the Gigabyte board that we held up, so I imagine it's going to perform nearly identical using the same processor, many of the same features as the MSI board listed here as well. Oops.
OCZ.
OCZ launches the Z Drive 4500.
Yeah, it's basically like the. Remember the Z Drive R4 thing we benched? That was like 1.6 terabytes, enormous, like 8 Sandforce controllers.
That's enough, yeah.
That's enough. Well, they haven't made one with more than 8, thank goodness. This is basically just the newer model of that, and with Toshiba flash, since everything OCZ is now Toshiba. So there you go.
That's the big change.
Why doesn't it have a skull on it?
Well, because this is OCZ, not Intel.
Yeah.
Also, it's $8,100 for the 3.2
Yeah.
terabyte model. I mean, that's okay.
It's a little higher than $1 a gig.
It's yeah.
It's actually not bad.
It's not awful. 3.2 terabytes. Talking about 250, something like that.
It's like $2.50 a gig.
Yeah.
But for 3 terabytes
2 years
worth-
ago, 3 years ago, that'd been pretty good, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still $8,000, but if we look at it in reference, that's okay. Steam Family Sharing is now available for all users. You don't have to be in a beta or anything to get that. So this is not the streaming. This is the sharing. This initiative allows Steam accounts to authorize devices to access their library on other accounts. The intention is for each family member to have their own account while being able to borrow games from one another. It does not include titles which use third-party DRMs, accounts, or subscriptions. Valve doesn't have that kind of control over that stuff. So, if you are interested in that, you can.
So how does it actually? Because I remember back when we were talking about this the first time, where like, hey, but your whole account like gets shut down while the other person is using. Like, so what's the real answer now? Can you just loan one game?
Yeah, you're just loaning them one game. And you can do it 5 different Steam accounts across 10 different devices. So essentially, you're just sort of borrow that game from what is mostly a pooled library. So yeah, while your kid's playing one game, you can't play that game, but your entire account isn't locked out anymore.
Gotcha.
Because that was sort of the first way that we saw it, and that was not perhaps the best implementation.
Yeah, that was like DOA. Like that. Don't even bother launching it that way because no one's going to use it. So this is actually pretty cool then.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see
it's like loaning someone a game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the reaction will be from developers and other publishers. Besides, obviously, Valve will continue to support it; it's their feature. But if other developers will kind of institute little tiny DRM things that prevent them from being used with the family sharing because obviously with 5 accounts and 10 devices, they're not really checking birth certificates here, right? So if 5 roommates in a college dorm or something want to share their accounts, they can do that, right?
But as long as they use protection.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fine. You know, you don't have to go to the student health building afterwards. It's totally cool.
Why do you know that much about that?
Valve supports
because it burns.
Oh,
it burns when you
always Steam
Left 4
shared
Dead
Valve.
2. Yeah, I mean, and if you're talking about multiplayer games, obviously you can't do that at the same time. So this would only work for titles like BioShock or something like that, where it's a very single player experience. But I'm interested if it gets abused to a point where publishers fight back at some point. We'll see. It's pretty cool nonetheless. Raspberry Pi Foundation, they're offering a $10,000 reward if you can get Quake 3 to run on it, apparently. This is, the foundation wants to drum up interest by offering $10,000 bounty for Quake 3 running acceptably on the Pi with the ported open source drivers. And the hardware this is running on is a Broadcom BCM 2835 SoC based on ARM, and it's Video Core 4 3D graphics processor.
Yeah, and it was closed source.
Oh, okay.
So how exactly you're supposed to program for that?
It was closed source. Now it's open.
Yeah, it was. It's not anymore.
So go figure it out. Somebody figure it out, please. But not us.
So spend 3,000 hours figuring out how it works, and then make $10,000, which that's a bad trade.
I don't know. Carmack could make that 10 grand in like 5 minutes, probably.
They could donate to charity, and we'd all be better off.
True.
Charity of Ryan. Trout. PC perspective.
Esquire.
Our last news post here: Samsung launching 11-inch and 13-inch Chromebook 2S, which is interesting, but made more interesting in the fact that the Chromebook 2 is powered by the Exynos 5 Octa SoC. 4 gigs of DDR3L memory, 16 gigs internal SSD storage, 802.11ac Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0. They claim battery life of 8 hours on the 11-inch model and 8.5 on the 13-inch model. What do you guys think about
13 inches 1090p or 1080p, or sorry, 1920 by 1080, which is nice.
Which is 1080p.
The other one's 1366, yeah, but that one's 1080p, which is nice to see. We're finally moving away from that crap resolution we're all used to.
So $399 for a Chromebook powered by a octa-core SoC, ARM-based SoC from Samsung.
But you can get full laptops for that.
And you can almost get the T100 sometimes, depending on how much it is, where you tend to find it in sale. But I mean, so that's what I'm going to be curious about, right? So Bay Trail, when we first launched Bay Trail, we compared it against various ARM SoCs, and performance tended to be better, but it wasn't by a huge margin. And if this new 8-core SoC from Samsung improves performance dramatically, I could see it being able to outperform Bay Trail, perhaps. Right? And we're talking about this system's not meant to run Windows, it's meant to run Chrome OS. So it doesn't really have to compete on the x86 idea. Right?
But isn't that possibly a bad thing? I mean,
that it doesn't have to compete there? Well, I mean, what do you mean?
Yeah, because then, so all you're running is whatever you can run on Chrome OS.
Correct.
And you're going to spend 400 hours for that?
But that's all you would do with any Chromebook.
Yeah, but weren't they cheaper than that?
I don't know the answer to that. Ken? Click what link? What link am I clicking?
That link.
No, but I can look at it and comment on it. I mean, yeah, you can get Chromebooks for as low as $199 on Amazon, but I also see some $248 up there as well, $279. I don't think that MacBook Air is technically a Chromebook, but good thought. The number one selling laptop on Amazon is the Acer C720 Chromebook for $199.
The number 2 is a Chromebook.
And the number 2 is a Chromebook.
Number 6 is a Chromebook. And the number 8 is a Chromebook.
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh, they're more popular than I expected.
Exactly.
And that's powered by, the most popular one is an Intel Celeron 1.4 gigahertz processor for $199. So.
And not too long ago, I posted instructions on how to install full-on Linux on that specific model of Chromebook.
This C7.
So there you go.
Yeah. So would that obviously those directions specifically wouldn't work on this unit powered by the Samsung SoC. But I think just looking at it from a native Chrome OS experience, it would be interesting to see how this compares to that, right? I mean, keep in mind that this other machine is an 11-inch 1366 by 768. It's got 2 gigs less memory. Battery life looks to be about the same. Internal storage is about the same. But, you know, in theory, you could buy that and put Windows on it, I guess, right? As well. Probably a little bit of work involved, but probably a little bit of work involved. I don't know. These Samsung machines are the ones I have seen in person. I have not seen these in person yet. Are very attractive, nice machines. So I don't know. We'll look. We'll take a look at that Chromebook stuff here soon again, because it's been a while since I've used Chrome OS for anything more than a few minutes at a time. I think we're out of our news stories. It's time to get into our hardware software picks.
Can we go someplace first? Someplace different. Something interesting.
Boy.
I don't. What hardware do you have?
Really?
What do you got? Let's go someplace.
He's waiting for you to cut him off.
I'm getting in the car.
I'm getting in
the car. All right.
AM1. It's more powerful than this, if anybody recognizes it.
It's a motherboard.
Yeah, it's a motherboard.
With side angled DIMM slots.
Yeah.
And lots of PCI.
Yeah. 64-bit PCI.
Yeah.
64-bit AGP.
Yes, and
can't make out the chipset.
Finger. Adaptec SCSI.
SCSI
It's tie-in, but it's not 370.
How about you just tell me?
It's the Thunder K7.
Oh, good lord.
This is the first AMD dual processor motherboard made directly for themselves. It ran the Athlon MP 1800 Plus, which ran at a true 1866 megahertz.
Athlon MP processors.
AM1 is more powerful than this monstrosity, which was one of the first EATX motherboards around. Look at that big stinking 24-pin and 8-pin. Oops, other side up here.
The Athlon MP I think it might have been that motherboard specifically, powered athlonmb.com for many years.
Way to go, tie-in.
And actually, I'm probably ashamed to say how recently it was that we had an Athlon MP server in some kind of production, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago. As recently as then, like it was running the forums or something, right? I mean, it just had a bunch of memory, and it all kept it in memory anyway, so it didn't have to do any processing. I don't know you know what? I bet that's in my basement.
It probably is. I somehow convinced Damon to send me 2 Athlon MPs and tie-in to send me that board, and I think Antec to send me, or was it PC Power and Cooling?
1200
that would have been
power
nice.
And cooling for the EATX motherboard that powered it all.
Nice.
And I ran Quake 3 with the special, multi-processor.
Yeah. Patch.
Well, there you go. You're halfway to the 10 grand already.
Yes.
All right, let's get into those hardware software picks of the week. So this screenshot here will show you that my pick of the week was the AMD R7 265. And if you look here, it actually still says add to cart. So I'm going to try to click this, and it's going to tell me, oh, it's been removed from my cart due to quantity limitation or insufficient stock. Some combo items may be affected by this. So no.
So you wanted one, right?
I just wanted one.
Just wanted one.
I just wanted one. Now I got to go into auto notify. So that was my pick, the R7 265, at the beginning of the show.
And I ruined it by advertising it.
Yeah, somehow I think it was you.
Yes.
Because I didn't add that in until literally like 10 after 10 local time. So it's only been like an hour and 30 minutes since then, which means right on the cusp of being a great day for AMD. Jeremy, you're up next.
Oh, there's this new site on the web that you have to visit because it will answer a question that has probably been driving you nuts for many a year. That site is literally called Am I Running Windows XP?
.com.
.com.
And
So this is
apparently
a new
I
tool
am not.
that Microsoft has put out because people need
not.
this much help.
I am not running Windows XP. Oh my God, what do I do? What am I running? Oh no, on April 8th, they'll be ending support for it. It's 32 days, 23 hours, 17 minutes.
So there you go. This has got to be almost as amazingly well thought out as now sending system messages to people who haven't disabled the system message in XP. You will get a pop-up essentially telling you to buy PC Mover Professional, which is almost the only possible way you could actually upgrade to Windows 8.1, because when they say you should upgrade, what they mean is back everything up to a separate hard drive, wipe your hard drive clean, install your OS from scratch, install everything else from scratch, and copy your files back over.
So, if you tweak your user agent string, it'll actually tell you that you are running Windows XP.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Right. I don't have that plugin installed on this
I didn't have time to play with that, but I really wanted to. Because I want to do a redirect for a lot of people just to scare them. So yeah, if you can't recognize Windows XP, there is now a way you can know, because there never has been before.
I always recognize it by the highly efficient way the operating system ran.
Yeah. I've defaulted to what shape is your start button.
Yeah, it's green. If it's green, you're on Windows XP. Josh, what is your hardware or software pick for this week?
Do I really have to tell?
No? We can move on to Alan.
Okay.
Alan, what?
So, okay. I did some horse trading with Maury, and I've enjoyed the fruits of this labor.
Yeah.
And it's the Silverstone TD02. It's a pretty beefy, self-contained water cooling unit. It's nice. It's not terribly expensive. It keeps it cool. It's quiet. It's got a big radiator. It's kind of got small tubes going into that said big radiator, which is not fantastic.
Fitting for you.
Yeah. But, it works well. The only problem that I've had with it requires 3 hands to install the damn thing.
That limits you.
There. Yes, you need to have some kind of small child or significant other, or somebody you can hire for a low amount of money per hour to help you install it.
How many hours are we talking?
45 minutes.
Ooh, I round up
and that's
to the nearest 5
and you
hours.
have to be able to yell at them during that time because they dropped a screw.
I refuse.
Just don't let them get their hands on the screwdriver.
Surely there is a way to install this with 2 hands. Did you maybe not read the directions?
I read the directions, and
Did you maybe?
Let's not go into that whole touchpad conversation.
Did you have some drinks?
No, I was stone cold sober. I couldn't do it by myself.
Besides, you shouldn't drink that liquid cooler anyways. It's not
Wait a
good
minute.
for you.
That's why. You were sober.
I would have somehow
Finally, the
done this
answer.
better with alcohol on board.
Finally,
Yeah,
the
sure.
answer.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Our final hardware and/or software pick comes from Alan, who has selected the
Humble Mobile Bundle.
Humble Mumble Bumble.
So this applies more to you guys because you're all Android guys. But that game called Vector, which I thought was pretty cool,
Yep.
is part of the bundle, and
Right
you
here.
get the deluxe version of the bundle if you pay more than $3.60 something cents. So
$3.
six Android games for like,
Oh, hey, Catan.
like 50 cents a pop.
Never played that before. Really? Never played that.
So those are some kind of popular Android games that are on
Might
this
have to buy
week's
that
thing.
now.
So
I
you
don't
can
know
get
if
them
it
for pretty
plays on
cheap.
QNX though.
I mean, you could literally do like a buck and
Blackberry.
get those first 4. So
Blackberry breach. Pay over the average. Okay. All right. I've never played. What is it? Settlers of Catan? Is that what it is?
Oh, hey, that's actually fairly cool.
I've never played that game before.
It's
see,
fun.
Never.
There's some good stuff in there.
Never
Like I
played
might
it.
even, and actually something I kind of like about what
Catan HD.
something I like about what the Humble Bundle guys have done. What they start this like 6 months ago or something. They started making it to the point where it's more like a portal. Like so, whatever you buy just gets added to your thing. Like you just have a list, so you can just log in there, and then there's a list of everything you've ever gotten as a Humble Bundle.
Yeah.
And you can even import like your old orders into that portal, and it'll just add those games. So it's sort of like a manual version of Steam. You know, you can just go there and like, here's all your Humble Bundle stuff. You can download all the soundtracks. You can download all the, all the little odds and ends that they included on those bundles are all just in one place that you can get to, I would guess, indefinitely, but for as long as they're around. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Having never played Settlers of Catan and being yelled at by other people, I guess I'll try it. I wonder if the mobile version is a good way to try to start.
It looks like a mobile-ish kind of a game.
It's a board game.
Yeah.
Have you played it before? I have not.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's like a touchscreen, and like it's
like a touchscreen version of it. It's probably a touchscreen version of it. You're probably right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it's a game that would work well on a touchscreen. Put it that way.
All right. That is going to round up the episode for us this week, our 290th episode. Thank you guys for joining us. If you missed any back episodes, this is your first time joining us, you can find them at pcper.com/podcast. We appreciate it if you would stop by, subscribe to the RSS, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get these weekly editions. You can also find us on Twitter, twitter.com/pcper, facebook.com/pcper, all kinds of places. And again, if you want to sign up for our live page subscription thing so that we send you an email, let you know when we are going to do any live events. It's pcper.com/subscribe for that. And one final reminder, if you go to the top of the homepage at pcper.com now, you'll see the Win a GeForce GTX 750 Ti contest is there and ready for your submission, which sounds a little bit more intimate than it meant to be. It's ready for you to tell us if you want to win a free video card. We've got 5 of them to give away. You could win one of them. So that's it for this week, guys. Thanks. We'll be back next Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and obviously all week long on demand at pcper.com/podcast. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malentano.
Good night.